Boom, and we're back. Welcome to the Building in Perth podcast, season 3.
Welcome, property investors. This is the Building in Perth podcast. If you're a property investor or you're curious about investing in property in Western Australia, this is the podcast for you. The reason for that is we're not going to hold back. We're not going to sugarcoat things. We're certainly not going to bullshit you. And we're going to exploit everything that you need to know. There's a lot of negative press at the moment in WA regarding building, and it doesn't have to be. So what we're going to do is help you navigate through that bullshit and create your wealth, free of charge. We're just giving you this information. Every month we're going to have special guests on who are industry professionals, and then we're going to release an episode every single Monday. So you're not going to miss anything.
Apologies for the delay, team. It's been 6 weeks since our last recording. I needed a bit of downtime. And to be honest, over the Christmas break in January, I enjoyed my time off, but I have been slack. I've been meaning to do this for the last 2 or 3 weeks to get this podcast back on the road. We've had a lot of DMs and questions about what's happening, why we're not hearing from you, etc., etc. Demand has been insane. So today's podcast is just going to be a bit of a recap of what's starting 2024, what's it look like, what's happened in the last few months, right? So number one of the biggest things I can tell you is from January the 1st, there was a 2% increase across all builders from last year. Generally, October, November was the last price increase majority of project builders put out. There was a 2% price increase done on roughly the 8th of January. There's actually been a 5% increase in February the 1st with all builders. Now, 𝗬cie West, our company, hasn't passed on this increase as yet. At the time of recording, it's the 14th of February. We will going to be putting in a price increase on the 1st of March. So for everybody on the fence thinking prices are going to, stop, absolutely not. There's no land available and material prices are still increasing. So when builders have increased the price by 5%, let's say, a 4x2 house now is roughly $400,000. Excuse me for my mathematical skills here. Basically, 20 grand. Prices have increased by about 20 grand per house. That is mostly all material. Labor rates have been consistent recently, but material prices are still increasing. So it's not the builders making more money, just so you're unaware. It's the material prices increasing because there's a shortage of supply and a high demand of houses to be built. Material prices are increasing. So if you're on the fence and you're waiting and you got a quote basically at the end of January, the chances are your prices is now increased by roughly 20 grand. Okay. So number one, please don't hesitate any longer because prices are going to be continuous for the next 6 months. That is house prices, but land is insane. There's no land available. So land prices are going bonkers because there's none available. It's a simple supply and demand thing. Number two, huge news. So obviously this happened over in the eastern states last year, but it's now been effective immediately in WA. Anyone that wants to build a granny flat, 70 square meters or smaller, will get instant approval. It doesn't have to go into planning. This is going to combat and help the rental issue that we've got here. So granny flats are actually going to be going insane recently. To give you a bit of an idea, granny flats roughly are about $250,000. So if you've been in your house for 5 years or more, the chances of you having more than 100 grand equity is insanely high. If you've been in your house 10 years or more, you will have probably enough equity to build a granny flat and it won't cost you $1. The good news about this is whatever equity you have, you can borrow 80% of it. Okay, so if you've got $100,000 worth of equity, you're allowed to draw on $80,000. If you've got $200,000 in equity, you're allowed to draw on $160,000. Granny flats are now getting rented out. 2-bedroom granny flats are getting rented out for $400 a week. So there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't take advantage of this option and build a granny flat, especially if you've got an investment property, especially if you're not living there yourself. Obviously, there's got to be certain sized blocks of land that this will get ticked off on. It's still got to meet its requirements. But in a nutshell, what you guys will want to know is how much is a granny flat going to cost. So $250 there or thereabouts will get you a granny flat, including all the headworks and the site works cost, running out power and electricity. Power, gas if it's needed, water to the back, subdividing the block, putting fencing in, putting a driveway in, clothesline, antenna, a sub-meter into the granny flat, etc., plus the whole construction, built under 6 months. $250,000. It is something you should highly consider if you're an investor or you've got a rental property with a bit of a backyard. Yes, you are going to lose your yard, but if it's an investment, the yard doesn't make you money. Another granny flat will, and there's no way in hell you're not going to be able to rent it out because there's just no rentals available. So you should seriously consider that if you can. Now, going forward, prices of material and labor, as I said just before, they are going to be consistently increasing all year. Not as crazy as what it was 2 years ago. That was insane. However, they are going to increase. So if you're pondering or waiting in the market, waiting for, a lot of these Facebook pages that we're on, and I read and I look at a lot of the comments, which is amazing. There is like a sort of stigma out there from clients saying that, I'm just going to hold off. I'm just going to wait until prices settle a little bit. 100% it's not going to settle in the next 2 or 3 years. Builders are actually capping their sales, not taking on deals because they're so busy. There's so many people building at the moment, and it's not going to stop, especially with the land shortage. It's creating more of a demand. The main reason for this, the established market, you can't even buy a house. You go to a home open, there's 30, 40 people turning up, and 9 times out of 10, they're getting snapped up by over-east investors who have got such large portions of equity because they invested a long time ago. The price over east is a lot higher, etc., etc. And the price of a house and land package or an established property here in WA is still the cheapest in the country. So in short, guys, rent prices are going up. You might get kicked out your rental because they're going to increase the price too much. If you have money, if you earn more than $70,000 a year as a single applicant, inquire and start building your own place. Don't wait any longer. If you've waited the last 2 or 3 years, you've made a big mistake. I promise you this, if you wait another 2 or 3 years, you're going to make a big mistake. The average median price in house now is price of a house in Western Australia now is $660. It's always been under $550 until the last few years. Guarantee you, man, in the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to be north of $700, $750. We're catching up to the other big states across Australia. It's still affordable here in WA. Builders have caught up with the build time, so that's something you shouldn't be too concerned about. But you don't really need to worry about that, because if you're listening to this podcast, you'll probably build with us at 𝗬cie West anyway. We're still offering a 6-month build guarantee. For double stories, we've pushed that out from 10 months to 12 months just because of the market conditions. Scaffold being readily available is quite hard due to a lot of the big project builders taking 2.5, 3 years to build double stories. So we're now offering 12 months for double stories, 6 months for single stories. But most importantly, next week, we're going to have another special guest coming on, Rash, a real estate agent in the established market, and he's from the agency. Rash has got a wealth of knowledge. He's one of the top 10 salesmen in the whole of WA, and we're going to talk about what's actually happening in the established market. So stay tuned to hear from me and Rash in our next week's podcast. But I'm glad to be back. Thank you for all your inquiries. I hope you had a great Christmas and a good Happy New Year, but it's time to get back to business. So thanks for tuning in, guys, and stay tuned. As always, we'll be releasing new podcasts weekly. Cheers, guys. Bye.
Stay tuned, like, subscribe so you never miss anything, and enjoy.